Hey, welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. We see Courtney Dauwalter doing more stuff with Cam Haines than we see doing with people like Freetrail or Singletrack. What's going on there? Max Jolfie to BPN. We got Arizona Monster versus Cocodona. That was already slated before the recent controversy. We'll tell you about the controversy and then tell you our thoughts on it. There's a sequel to Unbreakable that's been announced. We got some thoughts on that. And then just there's so many documentaries happening in trail. Do we have too many? King of Moab, The Finisher, The Chase. So we're going to get into it. Wolfie, you're healthy enough to have this conversation?
Yeah, we can get into it, man. Yeah, it was a rough week with COVID and then just the lasting symptoms. You know, it seems like this time the energy levels aren't coming back on charts quite yet, but we'll get there.
Well, maybe this will do it for us. What do you think? So I sent you the message because Cam Haines posted some, AI thing of him and Courtney standing side by side like they're buddies and just kind of laughing, going back and forth. My thing was that it just didn't look too much like Courtney.
Right.
And then your response was like, yeah, hey, why does Courtney seemingly be more connected with Cam Haines publicly than our normal trail running, I don't know, royalty, the normal people that if you're fast and you're good and you're winning, you're normally talking to Dylan more than you're talking to Cam Haines. That's for sure. Why do you think that is? First, did I capture it correctly? And two, Why do you think that is?
Yeah. You sent me that post. It was pretty cool. It reminded me of the old MTV claymation. Remember when they did like the celebrity death matches? That's the vibe those things have.
Yeah,
it's a cool concept. Yeah. I mean, you can put them up in your office and your home gym. Like they're just kind of cool little visuals to be an adult fan and maybe get motivated when you see Cam and Courtney there. So I like the concept. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of cool. But yeah, it didn't look like her. But I mean, I think it's just a matter of like kindred spirits connecting. I think maybe she just resonates more with Cam and the lifestyle that Cam leads than maybe others. And then Cam's got the infrastructure, when she hangs out with Cam, like it's a big compound and, just more professional, if you're Courtney, who's more of a professional human, which you'll hear this theme throughout the podcast today, like you're going to hang out with other professional humans. And I don't think we're there yet, no shade or knock, but there's clearly levels to the media game and, what Cam's doing is levels above anything anybody's doing in the trail legacy or big trail specific media space.
Okay. That's good. Cause I think about at that scale, who else do we have except maybe Killian, who's at that scale of popularity within trail. So the existing, I see what you're saying, media infrastructure can't handle if she goes on to Freetrail gets more out of that than she does.
Right.
And this is just thinking from like her team and her business that she's doing. So that's not her being too good for it. That's just like, hey, you got some time. Cam Haines will get you in front of 2 million people. Let's get your time there. So there's there's the business case. And then I just wonder alignment. They seem to be from the same level of like laid backness and chill. Maybe there's something on that.
Yeah, exactly. Affinity. Yeah, and I think she, maybe it's a nice escape because she gets to escape the normal conversation that you would have if you're on, Freetrail or, Singletrack and Finn and stuff, right? So you're just completely outside of the sport, but still, in a complimentary endurance type of audience. So,
yeah, that's true. And I wonder, I mean, just out of curiosity, because Cam Haines gets, he's buddies with Joe Rogan, he's kind of in that, I don't know, right leaning. I don't want to have to, I'm not dying to get into politics, but I just wonder also, in our culture, someone who's left leaning doesn't go hanging out with someone who's right leaning. So I wish they did. I'm not saying they don't. I do a lot. My politics, I'm often looking to talk to people and hang out with that disagree with me on politics, but not even have to talk about them. So I'm just saying I like the idea of that. Doesn't happen that often. So with Courtney and Cam hanging out, I wonder if there's some sort of alignment on how they see the world.
I think that at a minimum, there's some sort of open-mindedness there, or
there you go.
There's definitely not any sort of identity in Courtney and her politics or social beliefs.
Yeah,
because you're right; those who are fully invested and committed to their identity being wrapped into their political support or alliances, they're not going on to something that's going to be in that Joe
Different.
Rogan lane at all, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So more kudos to her, I think, for showing that she's open-minded and at least not
Yes.
dogmatic with any sort of belief one way or the other.
Yeah, I like that. I like that's a generous way to put it. The open-mindedness, and then on some levels, let's say they are different in that they can still come together and put out a silly picture like that or whatever, and she
right.
Revisits.
Which needs to be celebrated.
I love that.
So yeah, we can definitely
Absolutely.
take a minute to pause and just celebrate that relationship is there and it exists, and it's a positive example to hopefully have others emulate. Rather than tear it down and not celebrate it. But yeah, I wonder how many others are asking themselves that same question. Like, man, Cam and Courtney, like it's the relationship that doesn't make sense, but
Right.
we need to see more of.
Right. Yeah, man. I want to see more of that. Okay. And here's our chance. Max to BPN. And the reason I connect those two, at least in my head at first, is to say, Max, I align with the Satisfy culture, and Nick Bear doesn't seem in my mind to have a crossover into that. However, like Cam, Nick Bear has a massive audience. Nick Bear has if he were to officially declare himself in the trail running space, he would instantly be the biggest thing in trail running space if that was his podcast. So Max to BPN is very much like Courtney and Cam, and I like it. And I also hear that some people don't like it. Why do you think some people don't like it? Why don't we start there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's probably maybe just a lack of understanding. For most people, things that we don't like, we probably don't fully understand them, and so then we project our own insecurities or beliefs on it. So when you think about it, like the BPN athlete is going to be something that's completely foreign to most ultra trail runners, and they're going to pursue life slightly different than we do. But I think we have more in common with the BPN athlete than somebody who lives a sedentary, normal American lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And that's what I've always said is like, rather than, kind of shitting on the differences or, the visual, how polarizing somebody is from the BPN camp visually. They're always ripped. They always got their shirt off, right? They just have an aesthetic that's a bit intimidating, right? Like, don't shit on that. Just, get curious and maybe learn more. And there's things that you can pull from it that are valuable that you can apply.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love the move to BPN, I mean, Nick's a smart businessman, and I think that's intimidating to the trail space and the trail media group as well. He was at Western States last year, and, it was kind of fascinating to see how, he moved within the Western States ecosystem, and, how people had to acknowledge he was there just because of how big his platform is, but also not really fully embrace him. I don't think he was there doing his own thing, and he was fine with it, fully confident to be himself in a place that he's not fully embraced, but he knows that he makes waves wherever he goes. What was your initial reaction there with Max going to BPN?
It was a good feeling. It was the gatekeeping sect of our sport would not like it, and I like that. So that was a good feeling. Yeah, man. And also it's like, hey, he's doing this. There's money happening. This is good for us. If this is something that allows Max to be more into the sport, like more running, more time training, more time developing, more time narrative, getting story out, all that sort of stuff. So my thought was, man, I bet the check size from BPN is probably better than most of the any other checks that he could get right now. So for him personally, stoked on it. For the gatekeepers being annoyed by it, love that. Is he done with Satisfy, or is it just? I mean, he has both of them.
No. Yeah, I think this is fine. It'll not infringe on Satisfy because it's not anything apparel based. It's all supplement and fueling and hydration. And again, I'm not speaking to any of the quality of the BPN product line. I don't have any experience using it. So, there might be issues with, how they source their product line or the quality of it or, efficacy
Yeah.
or whatever that case may be. We're not talking about that today. We're just talking, of the superficial,
Yeah.
news and what we think it means for Max. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a massive win for him. And it makes sense for BPN too, because BPN to me is the ultimate lifestyle brand within supplements and
Mm.
nutrition. Like they are truly selling that lifestyle within,
Yeah.
the hybrid athlete and endurance running space. And Max fits right into that. Like no other brand, I think, would have been able to fully utilize Max's, attributes as well as what BPN already has established. They
Mm.
had like an athlete camp already, and Max fit right in. Like
Mm.
he didn't stand out like a sore thumb amongst the other athletes that BPN has.
That's
That's a
great.
good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
I mean, Sally McRae's already there, and arguably
That's what I was going to say.
she's
Yeah.
the biggest, person. She's probably the most successful professional athlete, even amongst Killian and Courtney. Like what she's
Yeah. Good
built,
point. I should have mentioned that earlier.
yeah, like what she's built for herself as a career, she's a professional human. Like she could go out to a Fortune 500 company at an employee summit, and she can give a motivational speech. Like I don't think that's in Courtney's wheelhouse right now. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like these are the skill
Yeah.
sets that Sally's developing. She's an author. You know what I mean? Like she hosts a
Right.
podcast that has huge numbers. Like she's just a
Yeah.
professional human, and I think that's the track that Max is going down as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pumped on it. It's interesting that it's right in line with that Courtney and Cam. And yeah, I absolutely
Yeah.
should have thought of Sally McRae as being, the like sort of the ultimate over Killian and Courtney even. Okay.
And
This
if
one's
other
weird.
brands don't like it,
Oh,
then
go ahead.
use that as a model. Like build that within the space. Like start doing more than just selling,
Yeah.
powders and fuel. Like start building this lifestyle brand that's bigger
Yeah.
than the sport. You know what I mean? Like we could do
Yep.
that if we wanted to here. We have plenty of
Well,
people who have that same, captivating character and
right.
personality and skill sets. So
Yeah. Sometimes people build brands so well that you don't know what their product is.
yeah, exactly.
And that's BPN to me. It was a long time before I realized that BPN was like he's monetized. So he basically built the brand and then he monetized with supplements. That's how it feels to me, because when I think of BPN, last thing I think about is that I think about really fit people going on runs through Austin and like images that I've seen of that. And Nick Bear without a shirt on going, making a case saying, he doesn't have it on, but it doesn't feel, it feels like he's making a case saying, hey, you can be an endurance athlete and whatever you would call that, weightlifter. Like you could care about your upper body and you can be an endurance athlete. And I think he was making a point of that. And from a branding standpoint, it brought a lot of people in. But sometimes people build brands so well that you have no idea what the product is. And I think that's BPN. So I don't
Yeah.
think, I think it's just a win. It's a win all around.
Yeah. And one last thing on the BPN point is that just like we talked about kind of with the Courtney Cam relationship, in social and political beliefs, Nick and BPN, they're very faith forward. Like Nick talks openly about, his faith and being a Christian.
That's
And,
true.
and I think Sally has as well. She's talked about her faith and how important, her beliefs are. And I'm sure that's a foundational piece of the BPN team. Maybe not all are
Yeah.
open with their faith or whatever their beliefs and alignments are, but even in some of the documentaries that you've heard with Max, I think coming out of the 12-step program, with his addiction and such, like he was exposed probably to the same faith principles, and there's probably some core beliefs there as well. So again, you've got a brand that's kind of aligning with core principles that are a bit at odds, I guess, with what's natural in ultra and trail and what we see. So also kind of a fascinating, similarity there with BPN and the Cam and Courtney relationship.
Totally. Okay. Arizona Monster versus Cocodona. Let's first have the conversation that we were set to have before everything that happened yesterday. Because I'm curious, in your mind, we got the 300-mile Arizona Monster. As this releases, I think people will be out in the desert running that race, the inaugural version of it, 300 miles, 308 miles, 309 miles. And then we have Cocodona, 250 miles. Okay, prior to the race director controversy with Arizona Monster, what was your thought on this topic?
Yeah, it was going to be interesting to see how this year played out with the different fields. And it's always going to be interesting to see who chooses which race, because you obviously can't do both. Both are unique. You've got one that kind of takes place more in the south part of Arizona, and then the other one kind of picks up right where the other one leaves off and heads north.
Oh, really?
So, I'm just fascinated to see kind of, again, who's going to prioritize the Arizona Monster because it goes 1st in the schedule, from the, maybe the Cocodona Legacy group of runners. Like, are you going to start to see people, rather than running Cocodona 4 years in a row, are you going to now go and run the Arizona Monster? So, and then are you going to see maybe some of the professionals also get curious, about the Arizona Monster? Or is Cocodona going to fully own the progression with the elites at the 200 plus distance?
Yeah, that's a good question. Initially, so there's some.
And who's going to be the first one to double this thing? Because, Andy Glaze or somebody is going to sit here and be like, oh, well, I'm just going to do the Arizona Monster 300, and then I'm going to go do the Cocodona 250, and I'm going to, the Monster Donut.
This is going to freak you out, because I was going to say, man, okay, we're talking about it. I hope that Instagram serves me up the person that's running it. And literally, there's a guy who's doing both, and he made a shirt.
Oh, my
Coco
God.
Monster.
Coco Monster, okay.
Yeah, Sosa Ultra Runner.
Okay.
Shout out to Sosa Ultra Runner. I've followed him for a little while. Jose Sosa Jr. So he's created this image that says Coco Monster 550. He made his own shirt. I think he's buddies. Yeah, he's buddies with Glaze. Glaze might even be doing it. But okay, so at first, yes, those guys, if they've got a lot of time on their hands, which is awesome,
and more money than they can count.
Yeah. So to be able to do a 6-day race and like a 5-day race or whatever, man, God, I'd love to go do that. So it's happening. There's already people doubling or making the attempt. At first when I think about it, I think Cocodona feels like a professionalization effort, and Arizona Monster feels like lives to me in the adventure space in my mind. So only reason that someone would run a Arizona Monster is if they wanted to get into Cocodona but couldn't. However, Arizona Monster already sold out. So it's really hard. I think whoever is going to run it. So now it's a 12 months in advance question. Which one are you going to pick? I'd be hard pressed to say that any of the greats are going to go, and any of the greats who are sponsored athletes trying to win the race would choose the Arizona Monster over Cocodona, unless their sponsor or their vibe or their MO is an Andy Glaze, Jose Sosa vibe, where further is more important or more miles is better. It's hard. It'd be hard to see someone to pick the Monster over Cocodona, and I think that's what I believe. I could go either way, but I guess we'll just have to see what the Arizona Monster looks like. The starting line already looks super legit. It's big. It's there's a massive effort into it. So I don't know that Cocodona could be taken down so easily by ultra adventures. No, destination races.
Yeah, I agree. So, I don't think I don't think that any of Candice's 200s are going to ever compete against Cocodona as the elite field, which is kind of fascinating because we're not really seeing the 200 expansion, from the professional side. It's really just Cocodona. It's either Cocodona or you stay in the 100-mile distance. So
that's true.
And I think it's because Cocodona still gives you the exposure that, brands and athletes can benefit off of with the Aravaipa Mountain Outhouse live stream, social medias. They offer such a bigger platform, for athletes and brands to activate off of the event.
Okay. But now you talk about the live feed and all that sort of stuff. Let's bring in the new bit of news to this. And that is, for some reason, your boy Scott Jurek doing some breaking news on the meme feed about Candice at the Arizona Monster having a spat with somebody. Go check it out, your boy Scott Jurek. Bottom line, it makes them both look unfavorable, in my opinion. However, it shrouded Arizona Monster in some controversy. Is the person at the top, is Candice Is she a good person? Does that matter? Is someone now going to not run her race? I think it colored it from a PR standpoint, but the controversy ultimately is trying to say this race has a bad race director because of what happened in that controversy, where Cocodona still being a Aravaipa one is, there's a halo, around everything that has to do with that. Does this color it for you at all? Does anything you want to add to that to make it more substantial? What do you think?
Yeah. So essentially, the Arizona Monster, Candice, had wanted some live feed footage at the finish line
Yeah.
and live stream footage, and so she contracts out to this gentleman, and apparently, they're working on, building out the technology that's needed, Starlink and everything else that's needed for a remote location live stream at
Yeah.
the finish line. And somewhere it goes south, and the devil's in the details, which we don't have yet. I reached out to the gentleman involved and just haven't heard back from him yet. So hopefully we can get a follow up and really
Yeah.
get some hard cutting.
Get a Wolfie 911.
Yeah, investigative journalism here. Like your boy up north.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this before, right? About how the sport kind of has a target on Candice's back. The minute she moves in a certain direction, she's going to get villainized, and we contrast that against Jamil, who can't do anything wrong. And I mean, yeah, this is a situation that when we get more details, we can truly parse out kind of where we land. But just in the reaction and response, Candice really looks like she's activated a very vengeful set of actions. After everything, she still is the one who's in charge. She's still the one of authority and, in control. And I mean, the narrative she controls, and she's the one really out there doing things in a public facing way that look very vengeful and aggressive towards somebody who's, an independent guy. And yeah, I don't like when you use mob mentality and activate and utilize your platform, like we're all people, like we all have lives outside of this sport. Like nobody here is, again, certainly not a full-time professional. This guy had a full-time job, and, he's shedding light on just, the consequences of her actions, people going out there and really saying some disgusting things to him, just to back up and try to show support, I guess, in some way to Candice. So that's what I didn't like.
Yeah. To me, that's just like, I don't even like the text being put out there. Like that, I don't felt like, it's clickbait. Did it help? What was the goal? What was the purpose? I mean, it'd be one thing if it was Marley Dickinson at Canadian Running, who does news, distributes news, but that it came from your boy Scott Jurek. I'm just thinking like, hey, what's the goal? You went off brand, you went way out of the norm and distributed this. What was your goal? Was it truly to dispense information, or was it to get back at Candice? Was it to get back at this other? Like, it just felt like I don't understand what's going on here. And then when you read through it, it just feels like, yeah, it takes two to tango. Those were two people. Maybe we were dealing with some stuff. We needed to go through it. I don't like what Candice did at all. I would not have done it that way myself. In fact, you have those phone calls instead of through text. That way people like your boy Scott Jurek can't send the screenshots. But still, I hate the way that she treated him. I hate the way that he handled it. There's no contract. There's so many problems on that level. So then the question to me comes back to, does this color the Arizona Monster that's happening, as we speak? Does it change Moab 240? Does being the king of Moab matter the same before? Because the person at the top is, in the words of a lot of other people, is bullies her vendors. Does it color anything to you for those races themselves?
I think the story's not fully written yet, and so
that's right.
Yeah,
that's
I think
true.
once obviously, here's the other thing too, is like it seems like it all fell apart when Candice made some sort of direct comments about demanding loyalty. The text message that was the linchpin here, I think, alluded to this gentleman, the contractor, maybe voicing some dissatisfaction with Candice in the event. And if he's out there talking crap on the event or Candice or something, and that's getting back to her, I can understand why she would make that statement. But it seems like it fell apart so abruptly. 6 days or so before the start of the event is when this apparently exploded, and there wasn't going to be any, live stream at the finish line. And so I can only imagine, like, 6 days before your inaugural 300-mile event, like, you've got so much crap going on. Why don't you just, like, back burner this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're out the money. You're not going to get it back. You don't need it. The event's still going to go off without this live stream. Like, just, regroup after the event's done and figure out how to, amicably part ways and, feel like you're made whole financially and with the equipment.
Yeah.
But I mean, to prioritize this as something you needed to do in a public facing way 6 days before the start of your event, like, bad business move.
Right. And I wonder why she didn't use Mountain Outpost even to just do the finish line coverage, because I think she says nice things about Jamil. Like, whenever we were, talking about our VIPA prize money, this and that, she chimed in.
It was
and
too
said
expensive.
nice things about him. So you think it's just the money?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like she was going the very thrifty route from, some of the comments that you see of other people who are in the industry, right? It was, I think, $6,000 for his time, and then she was going to buy the equipment. And I think she had a pretty aggressive budget on the costs for the equipment. And so this gentleman was going out of his way, I think, to, program things and do things in a customized way that were going to allow that budget to still put in, some type of product that was going to live up to the agreement. So,
yeah. And so for me, kind of to put a bow on it, I don't need the races that I run. I don't need the people who are in charge of them to be good people.
Yeah.
I don't like, that's a slippery slope to me, because everybody's got things that if they were screenshotted and put out there, probably, or maybe just bad conversations. We've all had our awful moments. Sounds like Candice has had a few times where, enough people feel a certain way about her. But to me, I mean, I hate this for everybody involved, especially those who are in the desert running right now. Like, I don't want them to, I don't want it to lose the, what they're working on and what they're doing out there. So for me, I'm still, to end the question, Arizona Monster versus Cocodona. I don't think Cocodona can be overshadowed in the professionalization piece, but they're both getting sold out. So, man, we still need more of these long races, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we need one that runs like north to south, or, I mean, like, it's just
right.
Arizona is the mecca for trail races. I guess we have very accommodating permitting.
That's what I was going to say. It must be very friendly.
Clearly the weather is fantastic, so yeah, if you happen to know an RD who's looking to build out a race, this might be, the best place to have a race organization.
Nice. Okay. Unbreakable 2 was announced.
Yes.
Unbreakable 1, many of us have loved Unbreakable 1. Unbreakable 1 was probably not announced before Unbreakable 1 was released, or, before the race of 2010. Probably wasn't months before saying we're going to do this great documentary. Maybe it was. My point already is that to announce it before the race that you're going to get an Unbreakable 2 caliber race, chances are good. But also, you're announcing something when you haven't done anything, and that gives you dopamine as the person announcing it. But the reality is that all the work's ahead of you. And you're going to say you're going to do Unbreakable 2. I think the actors are there. As to our pre recording discussion, sounds like the field's pretty close to being set, if not totally. But what a lot of pressure to put on yourself to say that we are doing Unbreakable 2. But JB Bennett is going to be a part of it, so I guess that makes sense. What do you think?
I mean, I love it just for, like, what we're trying to do with states debates. Is it's another thing that's building excitement before the race starts, and I'm sure the minute you decided to do Unbreakable 2, you already had immense pressure on your shoulders, knowing that you have to live up to that first one. So I'm okay with the early announcement just for the buzz of it and excitement. And then it probably allows them to better activate a big supporting cast of, help and cinematography. And, I can only imagine how much larger the team's going to be this time around than the first time. And so, I'm sure that they're going to be able to even put together a better, documentary than the first time, even if there's not those moments like we had in the first one.
Okay. Who are the 4? If they did it exactly like Unbreakable 1, and there's 4, who are the 4?
Oh, I mean, it's going to be Jim Killian for sure, and then I
Yeah.
think those other 2 slots are going to be open, for the race to determine. Right? It could be Hayden, it could be Dan Jones, it could be David, it could be, you know, yeah, it could be Visant. I mean, basically it's whoever is going to be in the mix at certain. I hope that they're just open to follow the race as it unfolds rather than, pinning their hopes on,
All right.
four athletes.
If they're getting if the documentary is going to have like the first one, if it's going to have lead up content,
Oh, it's gonna.
like prep for the race,
Yeah.
whose house are they going to? Are they going to Hayden's house? I mean, they got to be going to David Roach's house. They're certainly going to Walmsley and Killian's, getting family shots pre-race. What are you thinking? How's it coming together? But I think on a big documentary like that, like if the budget's huge, like you'll go to like 15 people's house and you're only going to use the 4 that you end up going with. I just wonder who else, is there anybody that's like, are there any dark horses? I mean, we're kind of getting, probably I'm just wanting to have the real conversation about the race.
Yeah.
Who are the dark horses? Who could surprise us? But who do we want to see in that documentary? Who are the 4 that we want to see? That's a fun thought.
Yeah. I think we all, have different 4 that, well, again, we all probably have Jim and Killian. Like there's no way that somebody's not saying Jim.
It has to be Killian if it's Unbreakable too. We got to have one thread like that.
Right. And so then it's, just a matter of who do you want to plug and play in your 3 and 4 spot. And at that point it becomes, just based on, probably regional alliances. And, if you're a Salt Lake guy, maybe you want, Caleb Olson, or, if you're from some other region, you're wanting somebody else. So yeah, it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be a good documentary. And I not only do I hope that they get the right athletes, but I hope they get guys like AJW, who we had on with States Debate, to give some commentary. I hope they get, Anton, to, contribute some commentary about it as well, just to, really connect the original to the sequel. So
I hope they clean up the Gordy origin story a little bit, get that a little bit more right. But also, I mean, I want to see Caleb. When you said Caleb, I was like, oh yeah, dude, what if this is Caleb's like year? We know Caleb's year is coming. It's just a matter of when,
right?
As a Utahn, that's what I'm thinking. Even though he's not from Utah, he lives in Utah. That would be amazing to see that, this be his year with all of this. But of course, Hayden, I want Hayden to get his, I want him to get one. It's just the year. Fun stuff. And you're right. AJW, they got to bring them all out. And so the pressure's on. I like it. If they can deliver, and if Freetrail's involved, if JB Benna is involved, if, are they going to pull in Drew Darby, who can seem to do no wrong, any of the other players, we're in for a treat. I might actually watch it compared to our next topic.
Well, I hope that the soundtrack is as good as the first one, because if you are an indie music fan, the first Unbreakable had an incredible soundtrack to it. And then
I have to check that
here's
out.
Something that's curious. In a world where Here for the Women's Race is a loud mantra and 50-50 coverage, does Unbreakable 2 have to include the women's race? Because Unbreakable 1 did not, and they weren't burdened by that requirement. So will the sport allow Unbreakable 2 to be simply a men's focused documentary? Or if they go that route, will there be loud voices who are saying, what are we doing, guys?
Equal coverage.
Not being progressive enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the year, this is the race where we have to have this honest discussion, because we've said this before. The women's stories and the women's races have been more interesting lately. They just have been. In this case, it's being totally overshadowed by this. And so you're right, the Here for the Women's Race. I mean, no one would, because it would come off as, disrespectful in an unnecessary way to say Here for the Men's Race. But on some levels, like, I'm here to see Killian's last race. I'm here to see Walmsley do this. I'm here to see all those things that we just said. I think we're going to learn something new about the industry.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna take the temperature of the industry with this. If it only ends up being the men, we have our guesses, our hypotheses. Maybe this is an entire States Debate episode, which would be fascinating. But man, I think Unbreakable 2 is deserving to be men only, because it is. Wow, you've got me on my heels. This is crazy.
All right,
I can't wait to see.
let's leave it there so we can definitely have a debate on it.
Okay.
And then my last one. This is a bit of a fun one. Does Unbreakable 2 go DVD only for the first 10 years? And really bank on the big YouTube bang 10 years later?
Well, okay. I don't. So what I used to do. So he had a website, Journey Films.
Yeah.
And you could go and you would have to like pay to watch the thing on Journey Films. He was ahead of his time on that. So I had the DVD, but then after I lost the DVD, or I gave it back, and I would go to Journey Films and I'd pay the $40 to watch it, to have the license to watch that one, and then I would lose that license, I lost the email, whatever, and then I got another one. Either way, I think we're due for some sort of. Don't make it so. Don't just put it on YouTube. Right. Make us pay $40. Like that's one that I would go to a theater to watch. Any of the film festivals, like that would pull me out.
Well, let me ask you this then. You may or may not know this, but could you have taken the streaming numbers and whatever other sales numbers from Unbreakable 1 and pitched it to Netflix and actually had like a Netflix documentary budget for Unbreakable 2? Because I mean, you've seen some other films get released on YouTube. I think the Barkley documentary was on there for a while and stuff. So could they be going that route or?
Whew. With the storytelling, I mean, so to get on Netflix, from my understanding, it's almost like in order to be considered, first off, you have to use the proper equipment, which is supposed to be like a, pointing to this is a high caliber production. So you got to meet the equipment requirements. No doubt they'll meet the equipment requirements. But if that's what they're considering, that's where the money has to be in this. There's no money in this otherwise, except unless a brand pays for it. Do they want Unbreakable to be brought to you by Hoka? Maybe. I mean, because we're all going to be watching it and talking about it. But if it's only released on YouTube, there is not the money. Even at 10 million views, the money's not there,
right?
For it to make sense. But if it goes to Netflix, if it goes to Amazon, and they're buying it, if they're licensing it out, that's where the money is. And I think maybe now that you've said that, that's what I'm going to be vocally advocating for. Build it so that it's good enough for Netflix, because look at what happened to Barkley as a result of The Race That Eats Its Young. I think that's a great observation on your end.
Okay. Yep. We'll see what happens, because they didn't announce any sort of partnerships with sponsors or anything else. So we'll see what happens.
Dude. Oh man, I'm going to watch Unbreakable 1. Okay. Last, this is a great tie-in too. I don't think we did this on purpose. It's just, this is where our minds are, and this is where the industry's at on stuff. We've had a lot of documentaries released lately. King of Moab, The Finisher, The Chase. And this isn't a buy or sell necessarily episode, but for me, I'm not in a documentary mood right now, so I'm not forcing myself to watch them. I haven't watched any of them. But I'm just not feeling the documentary right now for some reason.
Okay.
Have you watched all of them? Is The Chase available to watch?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think The Chase is available. They're doing the whole tour, right?
Yeah.
So I watched King of Moab and I watched The Finisher, and I watched them, I think, back to back, same day. So it was kind of interesting to contrast the two styles and approaches. But I mean, I think it's just fascinating that the three documentaries that we have out right now are on Cocodona, Moab, and Barkley. But maybe it's not so much that we have too many documentaries, but we have too many in obscure races that, a majority of the 95 aren't going to run. The 200 milers are still, a stretch for the 95 to consider approachable. It's still a niche of a niche. Even though you see them selling out, it's still a small, group that's participating in those races in the community. And then Barkley is its own niche of niche type thing. So, maybe that's why these aren't resonating with you quite yet, because you're aware of them, you watch them, on the live stream and such, or, see the results, but you're not considering them as, races that you're going to participate in yourself.
That's exactly it. I have started to use language like this only recently. I am impressed by these. I'm not inspired by them. I'm impressed. But if I was going to be running Moab 240, you bet I'd watch King of Moab.
I
over and
would
over
suggest
again.
that one of the three. Again, I haven't seen the Chase. I'll
Hmm.
try consume that when it comes out. But King of Moab's excellent. And again, we talked about Max early on. I think he was the creative producer, director. Like he had the control of owning the way in which that film came together. And you can
Okay,
just
that's
tell with the
cool.
opening scene that he gets it. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
he's not just somebody that satisfies dressing, but he has this creative, aesthetic and, artistic eye. He knows how to do things. And, he clearly has a history with film and with music, being in SoCal, skate videos,
yeah.
surf videos. The opening scene is
Hmm.
incredible. And it just sets the stage for the rest of the movie or
Yeah.
documentary. And the soundtrack, again, it's always important in these types of films, I think, because it's kind of just what pulls your emotions along, with the films. A
Mm,
good soundtrack can really carry a good documentary. And
yeah.
when you contrast it with the finisher has an incredible story. Like it had the story of the year, right? You had Jasmine
Right.
Paris, first female finisher at Barkley. My issue with that one is that it was done retroactively. And so, could you imagine going and filming Unbreakable without any of the race day footage? Like that's
Oh,
essentially what they were trying to do, is they were trying to
yeah.
reverse engineer a documentary about the story of the year without the
Yeah.
actual story of the day. And it didn't really
Mm,
land for me because
didn't land the same.
yeah, you didn't have as much content from the day of. And so you were just kind of
Yeah.
following interviews and snippets here and there, and then interviews. And so you didn't really feel the emotional connection to the day other than
Yeah.
what you experienced through social medias when it actually happened. It didn't put any more visibility or emotion into that day or to that film.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason that these aren't that I'm not, I mean, because I run, I'm in this industry. I love ultra running, of course. But why have I not gravitated to these? It's because they're not, because I'm not aspiring to run that distance. And so because I'm not like aspiring to run that distance, like when I was going to run the 100 miler, I watched the Y, I watched, Billy Yang doing all the 100 mile stuff. I watched that. Even the 100K content was doing it for me. So I'm not aspiring to run those distances. And because I'm not, unfortunately, these documentaries live in a space in my head where it's competing with watching season 2 of Alone, or, watching whatever docuseries my wife and I are going to watch at night. It's fallen into that bucket of like, which one of these are we going to watch? And so that's why I go back to, I'm just not in that. It doesn't take precedence for me right now. I'm impressed. I'm not inspired, and I only watch running documentaries when I want to be inspired. And so that's what I'll say. This is on me for not wanting to jump in. But if I was going to run Barkley, I'd absolutely watch the finisher. If I was in that space, I would. But I'm not. Someday I might do Moab. That one's in my mind somewhere, but probably not. So, do we have too many docs? That was kind of my question. Do we have too many running docs? Do we have more than enough? I haven't looked at the numbers. I'm sure they're great, and I hope they're great because I want people like Drew Darby to keep making awesome, inspiring films for when I'm ready. But do we have too many docs? That's probably not the right question, but what do you think?
No, I mean, I think it's fine. It's fair, to have a documentary come out, around the winner of Moab, especially when it's somebody like Max and he's the one that's, putting it together. It's fair to have a documentary, and it's appropriate to have something, memorialized for Jasmine Paris's first,
Yeah,
first female finish, right? Like,
yeah,
again, I understand why, you would want to create a documentary about something, even though you don't have the actual footage of the day.
right.
So it's still good to have it, for the archive, and then
What's the perfect race for a documentary? What do you think would be the one that would just be the most interesting or the best? I think that's where my head's at.
Western States and UTMB,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
why would it be anything else? It's
right.
like, UTMB has, an incredible backdrop. The problem is that the first, what, 60 miles, 50 miles of the race or so is in darkness. So
Inaccessible, right?
like, damn it, UTMB, like, come on.
Yeah,
uh,
dude, we need Unbreakable. Unbreakable 2 should have been UTMB. That would have been good.
no. That would have
You know how
been
much that would?
blasphemy. You got to keep Unbreakable 3 should be same thing, Western States. So,
Okay,
um,
every year.
yeah.
I do like what you said on Wolfie's World that we're being set up here to be incredibly grateful for this field
Oh,
at Western States.
I'm
Like
so annoyed by that. So annoyed.
that it should be the other way around. We should be disappointed when it's not like this. This should be zero. This should be what it is.
Yeah, this is what
What we're
every
getting
other
this year.
fan of every other, like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes are in the Super Bowl. And it's like, no, every Super Bowl fan's like, this is exactly what we want. This is what we get. We get the best teams, the best players
Yes.
to rise to the championship. And in our
Yeah.
sport, I don't understand
Rarely.
it. We've got to really, hedge our enthusiasm and gratefulness. It's no different than the elite athlete being so grateful that Hoka signed him and gave him a free pair of shoes and, $10,000. Like, don't be so grateful, that this company is, seeing talent and value in you that you admonish them from any responsibility to actually pay you a, professional wage.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good take. Okay, we got a lot of bad takes in this episode. Lots of bad takes. We'll let others decide. I think, to me, the thing that I'm most going to be contemplating and curious to pull the thread on is the Here for the Women's Race versus Unbreakable 2. How's that going to go? I think that's interesting.
My initial take is I don't want them to be burdened to follow the women's race.
Yeah,
because
unless it's on merit, unless we have Courtney, Katie, and all of the best ascending on it on the same weekend.
But it would be called something different. Again, just allow it to live outside
I see what you're saying.
Unbreakable ecosystem, which is already that formula has already been set. And it's been like that for 15 years, the 15-year anniversary. So it's 15 years that people have consumed Unbreakable, understanding what it was.
Yeah.
And let's have some.
Maybe the women's version. I mean, that was it called For a Day, In a Day.
Yeah. The women's side of the Western States,
very good documentary.
Yep.
Very good.
Yep. I've watched that one countless times.
Yes.
You have,
and that one that's a good example of one that could be done every year also.
Yeah.
With the right field.
Just having a freaking meltdown because her crew is gone, and then she rebounds and gets
hot day.
Yeah, I mean it's
hell yeah. I mean, so that's a good point. I see what you're saying. Let's not force Unbreakable to be like Texas Tech Red Raiders and then the Texas Tech Lady Raiders. Like, why don't you give them their own mascot? Like Unbreakable, that's like this thing that looks at the top four men in an interesting way. What's the women's version of it? Letting it have its own.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's get a female. Let's get a female film creator. You know what I mean? Like let's allow it to be owned and exclusively done through the woman's eye, through the woman's lens.
Yes.
Through, everything creative for women, and I would celebrate that for what it is.
Yes.
You create the soundtrack and you do the interviews, and you're going to bring your female perspective to it in only a way that a female could do. So yeah.
Oh man, this is a states debates. We got to figure out how to frame it, but this is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do this again soon.
As always.
All right, man. See you.